Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, Senator Scott Beason, Republican from Gardendale, is our guest. The V team will take a look at the results from HD 74. What a race. And some GOP candidates are cashing in with gambling and booze. You'll learn all this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to the Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard answers. I'm your host, Bill Britt. I'm joined today by the spectacular V team. Welcome, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning.
Lots of stuff going around the state. Nothing bigger than the race that was held Tuesday, where Charlotte Meadows got beaten like a rented mule. What?
Come on. It was, 300 votes?
That's a pretty big win when you only have 2,000 votes.
I think it was 14 or 15%. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Charlotte Meadows got, a little damaged. Defeated. Okay.
Yeah. Defeated.
By Dimitri Pelosi. We saw you in the paper about that. What's the story?
I heard about it. There's two big takeaways from this election as far as I'm concerned. One is the demise of the AEA has been greatly exaggerated. They played a tremendous role in this. They saw Charlotte as a threat. They beat her down, like you said, like a rented mule, and she didn't win. The second thing is a lot of the local personalities who think they own the airwaves around here, who were very rude and overbearing in this election and basically sold themselves out to Charlotte Meadows, were shown to be ineffective and unable to turn out the vote. They may have had power at one point. They looked like people desperately thrashing around for relevance right now.
It was interesting because, most of us live here. I mean, the newspaper, the radios, the TVs, everybody was totally behind Charlotte Meadows. And that's just not what the average voter...
Are you getting updates from Lee County?
Yeah, I get lots of crazy calls these days.
The thing about Dimitri, though, he is such a nice guy, and everybody says he did a good job in the county commission. And really, Charlotte, she pushed that Michelle Rhee agenda, the charter schools and all that. I'm not sure that's as big a vote getter as some folks want it to be.
Well, Students First put $20,000 into Charlotte Meadows' race in the days, I think the Friday before the election was held.
And, she was really kind of the unofficial endorsed Mike Hubbard candidate as well.
That's
and
true.
Then the Miss Sellers who ran in this race before got behind Demetrius as well. And the other thing is, he has restaurants all over the Montgomery area, and people have known him and his family. And he sits on the county commission. So, he's got the name ID. And she had been in office, but it's been, 6 or 8 years since she's been in office.
Well, and nobody's going to mistake Dimitri Politsos for a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon. I mean, he is a small business owner who makes payroll, who runs businesses, and there were a lot of people who said, well, he just doesn't seem polished enough. Well, if a guy like that can't be in the legislature, something's wrong with the legislature.
He's an average Alabamian, and he clearly reflects that district.
Correct.
Well, and I think...
He makes a good lasagna.
Right.
Well, it's great food, no doubt. He's an excellent guy. We congratulate him. Of course, Ms. Meadows, we wish her all the best. I suppose she'll go back to lobbying for Students First. One of the big things, the AEA did put a bunch of money into that race, but they didn't take it. The campaign didn't take AEA money. That was just, they decided to put in their own money. Is that correct?
And the way I read them, I looked over the reports very carefully, both of them, and neither one of them took any money that I could see that was tied to AEA in any way. Neither did Heather Sellers when she was running.
Well, her husband has always been sort of a staunchly against the AEA.
Oh, yeah. But, I think this is no different than, third-party entities in congressional races running campaigns, running ads like the U.S. Chamber
The
or different 527s. It's no different. I mean, AEA played in that one just like the Chamber and all these other folks played in Bradley Byrne and Dean Young's race down in South Alabama. There's no difference.
And it's not like they were the only group playing. Forestry gave Charlotte, I think, $12,500. There were others. You mentioned Student First earlier, gave her $20,000. It's not as if she was out there raising $50 and $100 from her friends and family, and the big bad mean AEA was beating her up for no reason.
Right. Well, that brings us to the next topic, which is dark money in these races. And one of the things we're seeing here in Alabama that you brought up several times is these foundations. You know, we just did a story this week where the Alabama Republican House caucus, you know, held a big fundraiser. We don't know who gives the money.
Right.
The foundation did. Who gives the money? We know they printed the invitations with Mike Hubbard's Craftmaster Printing. We know they did that.
Well, that's standard. You have to do that.
Yeah, well, that's what, yeah,
I mean,
we
you have
hear
to do
that's
that.
standard. I'm not sure it's supposed to be. But what do you know a lot about this dark money, don't you?
Well, and that's what Barron and I have had conversations about this before. I don't understand how a private foundation organized as a 501c3, 501c4, or C6 can accept money and then turn around and take that money and put it into electioneering and put it into elections, running ads, running, you know, hosting dinners for candidates and that sort of thing, because in my mind, under the Internal Revenue Code, that would negate their status as a nonprofit. They'd lose their 501c3 standing,
Well, no, wait a
and
minute.
they
I
would
understand,
pay excise taxes.
Because, you know, I have been to these functions and I have given money. I did not this time. But most of this for the foundation, my understanding, what I've always been told by them is, yes, to provide luncheons, dinners, generic polling. There's supposedly none of this money is for the foundation. It's supposed to be going into individuals' campaign.
And that's actually what would bust it out of being a nonprofit once they start
Right.
putting it into
Well,
a campaign.
there's some case law out there that says, you know, these things have to be primarily for public education.
Right.
And primarily means more than half. And so as long as half your money or less is going to political activities, the IRS has sort of stayed hands off with respect
I
to
don't
these
know.
folks.
I mean, half is I think a little bit high. I mean, the things that I've seen, the reports out of the IRC and the IRS is 5% is sort of the litmus test for these foundations. So if you've got a private foundation that's spending 30%, 40%, 50% of the money it's taking in electioneering, I think that is a problem for their status.
You know, I think the biggest thing, I mentioned this probably 3 weeks ago when we were on the air, we used to have PACs, we used to have PAC-to-PAC transfers. This foundation that the Republican caucus has had it years before. Now that they've passed this new rule about everybody has foundations and corporations, that's where the real dark money is coming from, because there is no way to differentiate between all these foundations, and nobody knows where the money's coming from and who's it going to, and there's just no way to keep up with it.
We're going to have
Very
to hold it right there. Great topic, dark money. Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, Scott Beason, Republican from Gardendale. Stay put. We'll be right back.
Big lights and bright colors, the future is drawing near with new thoughts and ideas. My dreams, they all start right here. So I take a step and time will tell. I'm filling up high like a wishing well. I got big dreams to take over the world. I got
I teach. I touch the future. I am AEA.
I keep the school clean every day for your children. I am AEA.
Congratulations on your scholarship. I help children make choices for college and careers. I am AEA.
We are AEA.
Here's to all the early mornings. To the last-minute surprises. And even to the ones that never made it to the table at all. Here's to the year the power went out. The year the sparks flew. To the overcooked, the overfed, the overtime. Here's to the biggest kids' table on the street. Here's to the day that may not always be flawless, but it's always perfect. Happy Thanksgiving from Publix, where shopping is a pleasure.
Welcome back to the V. Our guest today is State Senator Scott Beason from Gardendale. Welcome, Senator. Great to have you.
Yes, thanks for having me, Bill.
A lot going on around the state, a lot of issues to talk about. None more hot than Common Core standards. Rank and file conservatives around the state are talking about it in meetings. They're talking about it on the internet. Yet it seems that the leadership of the Republican legislature is not going to bring it up during the next session. What's your take on Common Core?
Well, I'm absolutely for a repeal of Common Core. There's no doubt about it. I'm hoping there's some miscommunication there between the leadership and some members of the press. You know, I'm very familiar with the press getting what you say wrong at times, but I hope that's the case. I was told last spring that we would take this up this spring, so I'm banking on that. But if you look around the country, the Republican National Committee is opposed to Common Core, the state Republican Party is opposed to Common Core, our congressional delegation, the Republicans are opposed to Common Core. And I think anyone who looks at this objectively would have to come down on the side of the fact that Alabama doesn't need to be following along behind what really is a national quasi-federalized education standard that I don't think is going to be good for the state.
Well, we're not a state that likes to be told what to do to begin with. We have a motto that says, dare defend our rights. But why is this Common Core such a hot button issue? I mean, really drill down into it
I think one of the things you have to remember is that the people who are proponents are kind of blurring the lines. They talk about standards and curriculum all at the same time, and they make people like myself, they try to make us look like we're against high standards. Well, I don't know anyone who's opposed to Common Core that's not for the utmost, the highest standards we possibly could have. But that's one thing. But curriculum is completely different. How you teach those things. Say the standard says you're going to know this part of algebra by the 8th grade. We can all agree on that. That's a high standard. But what curriculum, what textbooks do you use? What are the children taught to get to those things? That's a completely different thing. And what has happened, it always happens in education. You remember back when we had No Child Left Behind?
Right, right.
The same sorts of people said this is going to be the greatest thing ever. It's wonderful. The federal government's passing No Child Left Behind. Most of the states, there was only a handful that said no. Some of the same ones saying no to Common Core said no. And then every problem with education for the next 10 years was blamed on No Child Left Behind.
Right.
But they signed us up for it.
Right.
And we got it. And I tell people Common Core is just No Child Left Behind on steroids.
Wow. Well, I know that one of the things that people object to is they feel it's pushing an agenda, a worldview that's different than, say, our founding fathers would have seen that they wanted for our country.
Well, there's no doubt. You have to step back and look at all these, like everything in politics. Step back, take some of the emotion out of it. You know, it's funny to hear me say this at times, but have an open mind about what we're talking about. Everybody that knows anything about education, including the founding fathers who supported public education, they wanted public education for a couple reasons. To have a moral people, that's why they used the Bible so much in the things they did early on. And they also wanted people to know the facts around the founding of the country so they would defend the republic, so they would defend liberty and freedom and those sorts of things. And they wanted people taught how great those things were. So education has always been about worldviews. I have a great example if you'll give me a couple of minutes to talk about it. My 5th grade daughter, part of the whole Common Core thing, and I've had people say, well, you don't know for sure this is Common Core. Maybe they were just already doing it. Okay, great, but at least Common Core is making us focus on what our children are taught. She had a reading assignment just a few weeks back that dealt with cars. Okay, you and I had the same thing. Everybody watching your show at some time in elementary school had something to read about cars. And it was cars are made in Detroit and Henry Ford helped do the assembly line, all those kind of things. Cars take you to work. Cars take you on vacation. Just a simple teaching you how to read.
Right.
Well, her thing that she had to read, she brought it home, and they don't usually get to bring some of these things home. It was about how bad cars are. Cars burn hydrocarbons. Cars pollute. And then you had the think out the box question. And part of the whole Common Core thing, it's funny to me, they go out and ask people, well, don't you want your child to learn to think outside, to be able to read some material and then come to a conclusion? Well, everybody's going to say yes. Well, the come to the conclusion answer on this was one of two, and I'm still trying to request copies of this back, by the way, and that's another whole story. It was either the government should force all the car companies only to build hybrid cars, or the government should only allow people to only buy hybrid cars. Now, that's what I'm talking about,
Right.
a worldview. My 5th grade daughter, they have no business teaching that whole class of kids, and they're doing it across the country. Now remember, Common Core goes everywhere at the same time. All those little kids being taught that the government should force us only to buy hybrid cars, that is a worldview thing. That is different than just reading about cars. And I've tried to tell other legislators that. You can ask questions and you can set up a certain set of statements, different ways to teach the same subject, and that's the question.
Right. Well, and I think that I would have to agree with you there. We're really trying to get government out of our lives and not more government into our lives. But this is really set Republican against Republican at the moment. Do you think there will be some resolution?
Well, I think there will be. I think the people who are trying to do something about Common Core are very, very vested, very solidly in opposition. I think the people who are trying to save Common Core are still really struggling, and I hope it's an educational thing. If we can show them examples of what we're talking about, surely they'll see where we are on this. But it's really a fad. The educrats, as I call them, you know, they sign us up for these fads every few years. Remember new math?
Yeah.
What was wrong with old math? It got us to the moon with slide rules, and now we have new math and kids can't, you know, multiply.
Well, they sure can't count change at McDonald's.
Well, they have the new ones that some old guy that had old math invented so the computer would have pictures of the quarters and the nickels, and that's how they do it.
That's terrible, isn't it? A lot of people have been speculating about your future. I'm sure you're thinking about it too. There's an opportunity here, perhaps once in a lifetime, to run for the U.S. Congress. We know Representative DeMarco's in, Dr. Mathis is in, Will Brook has now thrown his hat in the ring. What are your thoughts on that?
I really struggle with it. There's so many things that we can still work on in the state, and I really do honestly believe that the states are the places where the republic's going to be saved. The federal government seems to be careening out of control. I think people on both sides of the aisle have to agree with that. So I struggle with that, what I'm supposed to do. My family and I were praying about it. I just want to do the right thing. I want to make sure that that I know where I'm being led, and we should know something in a few weeks.
It's always hard to make those decisions, isn't it?
It's really, really difficult. I mean, people have the misconception sometimes that all elected officials just love being in office. I don't love it that much, but I am very passionate about it because I want what is best for the country, because my kids are going to have to grow up there and live there. You know, I see it as service, really, and not in the flaky service thing, but as almost like it's your calling. You have a duty to try to help save the country and save the state, and that's really the way I see it. There's got to be people out there willing to take those tough stands so that America and Alabama will be a better place in the future.
We're glad you're doing it, and thank you for being on our show. Come back anytime, will you?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All
Good
right,
to see
thank
you
you
again.
very much. Senator Scott Beason from Gardendale has been our guest today. Wish him all the best.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
I make sure to get your kids to school and home safe every day. I am AEA.
I make sure your child receives a healthy meal each day. I am AEA.
Thank you, AEA, for protecting our public schools and our futures. We are AEA.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. We are the V. Well, Scott Beason had a lot to say about Common Core, and I know that's a big issue among the rank and file members. I mean, there's a lot of pushback on this, but the leadership just seems to be ignoring it.
Well, the Alabama State Republican Party has come out against Common Core. The National Republican Party has come out against Common Core. The Tea Party is rabidly against Common Core. Most rank-and-file Republicans seem to be against Common Core, yet the leadership of the Alabama State Legislature, Republicans, refuse to address it.
It just doesn't make sense.
No, bad politics.
So who's in charge here?
The BCA's in charge. They don't want Common Core repealed, and they're driving the train on this issue.
Well, I think it's unfortunate as if you look at the dynamics of the state of Alabama and all the military that we have all across the state that we need to be thankful and supportive of because it's a tremendous economy here. Those kids that are here for 2 years and come back and go to the next states, they need that consistency of a Common Core education.
But the folks in Alabama are just sick of federal mandates. They just don't want any more No Child Left Behind or Common Core or anything. They're saying, no more. We don't want it.
One of the other things that we talked to Senator Beason about, and you talked to him on screen about, and I talked to him off screen about, was whether or not he would be pitching his hat in the ring for the congressional race, the congressional seat that's being vacated by Spencer Backus. And his answer to me was, I'll let you know in January.
Well, he's been saying that because when this first was announced, because Senator Beason had run before, they did a poll at the congressional committee and he had the highest numbers. But I think the dynamics have changed big time in that seat this week because Will Brook dropped and he has announced that he's running. And I think he will be a very, very formidable candidate. He will certainly be able to raise money. He is he's a great person. People get along with him. He knows people all throughout the state of Alabama. Speaking of BCA, he was the chairman a couple of years ago. He'll be able to raise money throughout the entire state. And I think he'll be good on the stump. And I think it's going to hurt. And another one, Paul DeMarco's in there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. How's it affect Paul?
My hunch is that with Will Brook now in the race, that's going to drop a lot of Paul's money.
Well, we all know that money is the mother's milk of politics. And speaking of fundraising, we got some pictures from a fundraiser recently in which there were some booze, some poker chips and cards, and a few other things.
Well, I didn't see any women dancing, but now...
That would have been the trifecta.
So all we had was some booze, some gambling, and Speaker Mike Hubbard
well, it looks like not just like plain old slot machine gambling like everybody's complaining about. I mean, I see poker chips.
Those are table games.
Yeah, table games. Card games.
High stakes. Our friends down in Atmore would love to have a few of those, I think, but I don't think they're going to get them anytime soon. Why is it we have such hypocrisy, though, on this issue?
What is it? Emerson said that consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. Apparently, we are not suffering from that affliction these days.
Well, and it's hypocrisy across the board. It's not just on the gambling issue. Go back to the Common Core we were just talking about. It's hypocrisy across the board.
Go back to PAC transfers, now foundation. There is no transparency and the hypocrisy. And the people don't like this.
No, I mean, I was looking at that thing again yesterday. I was doing an article on these foundations, like we were talking about earlier. And during it's just the same thing. It's PAC-to-PAC transfers again. It's just shaded over, called something different.
Actually, it's worse than, in my estimation at least, it's worse than the PAC-to-PAC transfers
Yes.
because at least then, if you sat down and you were willing to spend a little bit of time,
you could follow the money
and you could see where it was going. And there were certain people who control certain PACs, so you knew where the alliances are. With this dark money, you have no clue who is contributing to these foundations.
Or how much they have, and that's the key. We keep hearing this claim that there's $10 million. We look at the PACs and say, boy, they don't have $10 million. They may. We don't know.
But
There's
apparently
no way
it's
to
coming
know.
from drinking, gambling, and
Well, this association gave $20,000 to the Alabama 2014 PAC. I mean, come on, that's big bucks for a deer association.
But that's because their contract lobbyist also gives his monthly stipend to 2014 for the last 4 years as well.
Well, this is not.
And
what
let's be
people
clear.
elect.
Let's be clear about who is controlling 2014. That's the Rileys and the Riley
right.
family. And these were folks who came out very big against gambling at the end of their tenure and appointed the governor's task force on
And the
gambling.
czar.
And now we have them drinking liquor and playing cards and
Well,
throwing the chips
you
in.
know, theirs is a little two-sided. They're for Indian gaming, not for private sector gaming.
Well,
That looked pretty private to me on the
yeah, it
in
was.
those pictures.
Well, they were gathered together at an event. We don't know all the particulars, but we do know that a big event is coming up for all of us next week, and that's our Thanksgiving holiday, which is a very American holiday. Barron, what's your thoughts on the Thanksgiving
Well,
holiday?
sometimes you have to know the depth of a problem before you can appreciate the height of a situation. And recently I've been stabbed in the back and hurt very badly by who I thought was a very close friend. And so it reminds me of how thankful I am for those close to me, friends, family, 4 beautiful children. And I can really appreciate it more this year, I think, than other years because of what's happened recently.
Claire, what about you? You've got a great family.
Well, thank you. I'm very blessed, and I have 3 beautiful children I'm very thankful for, and my mother and the rest of my family. And, you know, it's been such a joy and a lot of fun, you know, developing our friendships here at the V with everybody. And I'm just thankful for everything that I've been given.
Shalana?
I'm happy and thankful for my daughters. They're healthy, they're beautiful, they're bright. They keep me on my toes at all times. I'm thankful for my family in Dothan, my sister and her family, and my little nephew, who is like the son I never got to have. So he's one of the things I'm most thankful for this season.
Well, I guess I'm most thankful for my wife, who's put up with me for 26 years, which makes her pretty much a saint. And I'm very thankful for her. Very thankful for all of you, and to get to do this work with you. You're wonderful people to be involved with. Thankful for the state of Alabama. Thankful for the viewers of this show. You mean the world to us. Without you, we wouldn't exist. We work every week so you'll know what's going on, so you can make good decisions. We know you may not care about politics, but politics cares about you. Happy Thanksgiving from us all, right here at the V.
Here's to all the early mornings, to the last-minute surprises, and even to the ones that never made it to the table at all. Here's to the year the power went out, the year the sparks flew, to the overcooked, the overfed, the overtime. Here's to the biggest kids' table on the street. Here's to the day that may not always be flawless. But it's always perfect. Happy Thanksgiving from Publix, where shopping is a pleasure.